Welcome back to Live Stories with Richard Evans. Richard, the next part of this incredible journey involves Wingates, and it's very personal for me. My brother played in Wingate's band just as you joined. He was at the ripe old age of 15, and here we have a piece, Fireworks, Elgar Howarth, probably the most complicated percussion part that had ever been up to that day.
Yes.
Very simple now, but still quite complicated. How did you approach this?
Well, Martin, you're right to say complicated, but it was obviously my first time at Bellevue. Right? I played there with Lennon Motors, but we'd never been anywhere near Prize. And so I looked at it, and Derek Chappell came with the music, and he said, here's the music. And this was in a rehearsal, so he said, let's run it now. So he handed it round, or the librarian did, and I opened the score up and I thought, I can't conduct this without looking at it. Because when I teach conducting, I say, never go unprepared in front of a band.
Of course,
so that's
yes.
golden rule. So I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do, fellas, because it was all fellas. And I said, I'll just do the bits that I know I can conduct. And so we got to it. And I looked at it, went home with it. I thought, my goodness, this is complicated. Ooh, 5s and 9s and 9/8 beat 4. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1. Well, I hadn't done that before in my life, so it really was a problem. So I came back in the band and I said, look, because they were a great set of fellas, but four guys had recently just left, so we had to replace those. And they weren't the best band in the world, but they were for me because they were giving me a chance. So I said, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to rehearse this very, very often and do it in sections. And I'm almost certain that every section had 7 rehearsals on their own, with me. So you imagine that, the time we put on that. And we had somebody came from Bellevue, forget the man's name now, and he was worried because so many bands were complaining it was far too difficult, far too much percussion. And he said, what do you think about it, Richard? And I said, to be honest, I'm that busy working on it, I don't know. I only realised we have to play this. So because he wants to talk about it, taking it off, not doing it.
That's right.
So we worked at it, and I thought, well, we can't do any more than that. So we went to Bellevue, and we drew, I think it was 22, because there was 23 bands. And so I said, look, what we'll do, fellas, when we'll go to the long side entrance, and we had a rehearsal room, there was a pub there then. And so we ran it through, and I said, why don't we go, it hadn't started, let's go and listen to maybe the first 7 bands. So we went to listen to the first 7 bands, virtually as a band. And I said, right, we're back to the rehearsal room. We got there, and they're all grinning like Cheshire Cats. Mr. Evans, they can't play it, can they? I said, well, I've not heard anybody play it yet. We can play it, can't we? And I said, well, don't tempt fate. So, and we went, and Fairies apparently played well, because Witchley always said we should have beaten you. So, and we went in, and it's one of those things, of course, I had my cravat on, like you mentioned.
We will come back to those later.
And I started it and I thought, wow. Because in my study at home, I have a big frame, a double-sided glass frame, and Elgar Howarth sent Wingates this. You may like this, gentlemen. It's the first sketches I had of Fireworks, and it's a double-sided, massive piece of glass, and on both sides, and you can see da-dee, da-da-da, all the choral and things like that. And there was Bill Relton, I think, and Roy Newsom, the remarks, and him as he was an adjudicator, not adjudicator, it was, what did you call him? He didn't have any points on. He was like
an advisor,
yes. Something like that. So, and his remarks in there, and and I thought, hey, this is going all right. It's going all right. And there was one bit you've played the test report, haven't you? And then it goes into a 3-2 rhythm. And I get emotional. And coming up to this bit, and it went into 3-2. And I leaned over and said to Brandon, we won this bloody thing. I can ask him to, and I was almost crying. And it was super.
How nervous were you?
When I started, I was nervous.
Yeah.
But after the first, boom, beep, and Elgar Howard said, I didn't like the way you played 2 semi-blues at the beginning, and I didn't write for you to break, boom, you should be, you should have done that, but that's the only question he had, you know.
Incredible.
And so the results were coming out, and I was standing with Charlie Sutherland, and he says, Barnum, 6 prize go to Barnum, 5th prize to Barnum. So we got it, and then 2 fairies. And I said, oh, Charlie, we've not won it over. He said, what do you mean? I said, big house, I tell you what, that we've bloody won this today.
And he was right. He was right.
Oh, I was like walking on water, and all the band changed quickly to do because you do
the concert afterwards.
Yeah. I'm still in a fancy flowery shirt, you know, and I did it with that, yeah.
Incredible.
So it was good.
Incredible. Do you think that, Richard, do you think that comes down to teamwork?
It had to
do you think it just comes down to ability of the players as well?
Oh yeah, there were good players in it, but it had to be teamwork. But it had to be the fact that you should never be nervous if you can play your part, and they could all play their parts. You see that nobody was nervous, because that amazing story where I think it was Corey's. It was Arthur Kenny, and the drummer struck the bass drum and it rolled down in front of him. Do you remember that? No, he did that on that day.
Yeah.
So, but what it did, it announced to the band movement that I was about, in the sense that they said, hey, he's a new conductor. I wasn't a new conductor. I've been working like mad in 4 sections for 10 years. So it wasn't new. I was new to that big scene. And then...
And you're still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, great result at Wingate. You're there just a year. Okay. And then you make the trip down to Stockport, to my old band, to Fairies. Now, to me, somebody who's won the British Open with a great band over there, that must have been a huge wrench to take you away from there, and somebody must have been behind it.
Yeah, you're very, very wise. Yeah, there was. Well, my mentor, because Wingate, I love being at Wingate. We were having a great time. We were getting good players in, and then Derek Chappell, bless him, the band manager, he said, look, people will come after you now, I know, will you give me a chance, whatever they offer, give me a chance to match that. I said, promise I will, because they gave me my chance. And then we were going off for Bolton, there was twin town job.
Sure.
And we were going to Le Mans. And so we knew we were going to have a lovely time. And I was living in a caravan. I just bought an old tumbled down barn and cow sheds. We were doing them. And I got this call, HM, and I said, HM, what? He said, are you happy at Wingate? And I said, no, come on. What
is that a loaded question or what?
And he said, no, I'm not telling you anything. He said, you're going to enjoy yourself in Le Mans. I'll phone you when you get back. Well, I was wondering all the time what this was. Not knowing that Kenneth Dennison had disappeared.
He's just gone, hadn't he?
Yeah. So we had a lovely time. It was a great time in Le Mans with the lads. So we have so much fun with it. sounds awful, but in those days, most bands were just all men.
That's
So,
right.
Yeah, I mean now, thank goodness we've got some wonderful girl players, and they've lifted the standard. So I got home, and he said, pick me up at Stockport Station tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So I went round and picked him up, and I said, where are we going? He said, you know where we're going. You know. And I said, well, I've an idea. And that's when we drove into Fairies. I said, I hope you don't expect me to do an audition. Oh, no, I know what you can do, you know, but they don't know you're coming. And we went straight into the director's room, and it was like silver platter with curly sandwiches and Bell's bottle of whiskey there, and so I was heading and everything. And everybody's very, very kind and nice, and all of a sudden it went quiet in the room, and in walked Lord John Gregson, who was the
chairman at the time, of course.
And HM said, oh, Richard, let me introduce you. So I went over there, and he said, oh, Richard, it's nice to meet you. And this is Lord John. Nice to meet you, Lord John. Yeah, and I believe you might be conducting our band. And I said, yes, sir, I think I might be, sir. He said, I hope you beat those, he didn't say a rude word, but those beggars.
Those fatherless ones.
The fatherless ones in Queensbury. He said, well, that's your job to do. I want you to do that. And I said, well, I'll do my best, sir. You know, and he said, I'm sick of, is it Peter Lambert? I keep bumping into Peter Lambert. He was a director at John Foster's.
John Foster's, yes.
He keeps rubbing my nose in it or something like that. So then the next thing he did was walk me into the band room.
And all the bands there,
the band
ready for you?
Yeah, well, they were already. In fact, I don't know if somebody was conducting. And of course, I had a good look round. And he said, with a bit of luck, I think Mr. Evans might be conducting us soon. And I got a nice clap from the wall. And then they said to me, they said, how much are you on at Wingate? And I said, they get £4.50 a rehearsal, £4.50 a job. He said, well, we do better than that. It's £15 a time.
Which in those days...
Oh, it's not bad money. We're talking 76, you see.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I went back straight away to Derek Chappell. I said, I've got some news for you. They're offering me that. And he went, I don't know. But he said, I've got to talk to the committee. And I know there was one or two, one person in particular, doesn't need to be named. He said, we're not paying him that kind of money. So, and as it was, so he came back to me and said, sorry, we can't match it. If they'd have said a tenner, because I loved what they'd done for me.
Exactly. It's not all about the
money.
No.
And so I said, oh dear. And Frank came in after me at the Wingates, and they were paying him £12.50. So, but then, of course, I went to Fairies. I had a tough time because you're under, as the higher you go, the stricter the orders are.
Absolutely.
Get this band winning things. And I had to sack one or two people, which never nice.
But you're there to do a job.
And well, that's it.
You can't be liked all the time.
No.
You have to take the tough decisions, and that is what I think separates the great conductors and the great bands from the mediocre ones, because there has to be a chain of command. There has to be,
and you have to
that
be tough
respect,
enough to do it.
and you have to be tough enough to do it.
When I've had to do that, I've had stomachache for nearly a week, but you have to face it. And my father said to me, son, if you have a problem, face it. Don't go around the back of it, because it's going to bite you on the bum.
Exactly.
And it's true, you have to sort it.
So, how was life at Fairies?
Oh, it was great. I loved it. And the lovely story, we were doing a concert down in the school in Prestbury, I think it was, and most of the directors from Fairies had lovely houses there. And we were getting ready for the concert, and this was a concert for the school. And Lord John came in and to the dressing room, and he said, "Where's Richard? Where's Richard?" And somebody said, "He's over there." Like, so he came over to me, and I said, "Hello, Lord John." "Never mind that," he said. "You got me in trouble in Parliament last week." And I said, "Who did that?" He said, "Yes." He said, "The Prime Minister, James Callaghan, wasn't it?"
Yes.
He came up to me, he said, and he's poking me in the chest, "You've just stolen my PPS's favourite conductor." Well, his PPS was Ronald Stott from Westhoughton. Well, he was
The MP for West Orton, of course. Yes.
for Wingate, yeah. And I thought, oh, so people
If
don't
only
realise.
today brass bands had such representation in Parliament
Yeah.
as you brought to them in the 70s.
Well, yeah,
That was
yeah,
wonderful.
that was nice. Yeah.
I suppose the interaction you had with Lord John Gregson showed at the time just what bands meant to their corporate sponsors.
You're so right, Martin. You're so right.
And it's a thing of the past, unfortunately now. But I guess that same philosophy came into play when you were approached by Leyland to restructure the Leyland band with the sponsorship and the support of Leyland Vehicles, and that led into probably the most famous chapter of your life.
It did, yeah. I must admit, yes. And exactly, you're dead right. You're very clever there. I was judging over in Belfast, so I was going to catch the night ferry from Liverpool, and I was approached by this man called Rob Orchard. He was a marketing manager in Leyland Vehicles, and he said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "What about?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, I'm going to Belfast on the ferry. Well, I'll just have 10 minutes in your local pub." So we went to the Farmer's Arms. I was already on my way to Liverpool. And he said, "Why don't you conduct the Leyland band?" I went, "What? Oh, it's a third section band." And he said, "Well, yeah, but now we are sponsoring the band." And I went, oh, that's interesting. But no, I said, I'm conducting ferries now. We do CDs and we've been on television. We played in front of the Queen. I said, no, that's hard work. And he pestered me. I got off to Belfast, and he said, I'll ring you when I came back. I came back, and he said, "I want to see you again." And then in the end, he said to me, I said, "You're getting on the nerves now." I said, "No." I said, "No." He said, "Well, we want you to do." And he said, "Well, tell me, what would you want to conduct the band?" And I said, "Well, I want a 3-year contract, and I want 10,000 a year, you know, pitching that out of the sky." And I looked at him, and he didn't blink or anything. I thought, hang on, I'm on to something, because
You should have asked for 50.
I lived 3 miles away from Leyland, and 45 miles with no motorway to Stockport. And he said, "Can we negotiate that?" I said, "Yeah, okay." He said, "I'll come back next week with a plan and a possible thing for an agreement." And he came back, and he said, I said, what are you on about now? And he said, "Well, 3-year contract, 7,500 with a bonus if you do what we want you to do in 3 years." And I said, "What's that?" "You've got to put that band in the top 5 of the country." And I said, "In 3 years?" I said, the third section band. It'll take me 3 years to get out of that section." So he said, "That's on the table." And I nearly said, "Give me a pen." I'd have signed it there and then. The band never knew that yet. Never knew that. Nobody. I kept that to the family and me. And that was what we were all about. And amazingly, we did it in 4 years. And we were second at the British Open.
And I think, if I remember right, you took 4 years with it
I did.
because somebody forgot to post the application form for the
Correct,
Grand Shield.
yeah.
I won't name his name,
No.
but we know who it is.
Yeah.
But that was the only reason it took 4 years.
Because I rang Jim, I said, what? He said, "No, you're not in the Grand Shield." He said, "You've not applied." And I said, "Well, you know." I said, he said, "Because he ran it, you see, he runs it."
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
And that was it. So, and the rest is virtually history. The wonderful thing about that Leyland Vehicles band, there were third section players, and they managed to collar Desmond Pitcher, the chairman of Leyland Vehicles, in Pontins. They got him to the country because they actually got to the final of Pontins third section. They didn't win anything, but they got him in a corner and said, "Why don't you sponsor the band? Why don't you sponsor the band?" And he agreed to do, and he bought them all brand new instruments and brand new uniforms. The instruments, by the way, our band manager, he's the worst cornet player you've ever heard in your life. He was from almost a non-registered band, and he bought like 3-valve basses and the cheapest in a way. And but all of a sudden they said, yes, he's doing it. He's going to sponsor it. And there were, I know there were two other names, as well as mine, two other people, which it's not fair to say anything about. So, and he kept coming after me. And the trouble was, I stood in front of the band on it was Christmas time, and I said, look, you know the company mean business, they want a band like Black Tie. Now I said, if some of you don't think you can make that, it looks like I might not as well, but I don't want to go around and become it. Well, I got Novus Hatchet man, but I said, I don't want to just like sack you all. And they said you used to come in band and turn this, and if there was a cross underneath this, they were going, but not true, that was not true.
That was a different band.
But then I got, these people came to me, after that I'd spoken, about 6 of them, and said, look, we're not good enough to play that on like that guy, but will you warn us, don't just sack us. Will you come and we'll have a chat with you and say, okay, and bye-bye, we'll do it.
And how fabulous is that?
Marvellous, because I said every time you voted for them to sponsor, you were like getting ready, you were signing your own death warrant in a way. There was just 2 or 3 awkward ones who thought, well, I'm better, I can do it. So
as always.
Oh yeah, it was.
As always.
But the lovely thing that happened, there's one in particular who's been around for a long time, he stayed in the band a bit. And he said, the wonderful, all of a sudden, you'd say that, and somebody sit next to you, say, oh, is it? Then you play, and think, poof, and then he, poof, and the band went, did. And that's when I had to say to Alexander, who was Robert Alexander, he ran the contest then, the finals, he ran the actual brass band, the areas and finals. I said, Robert, I'm putting a heck of a band together here, it would be unfair to stay in the 3rd section. I think most of them are professional, no, they're championship section. You can go up to 2nd section, he said. So, and I said, well, all right then. And we weren't liked for, I didn't do anything, we were 78, just getting the band together. 79, then I decided to go, I said, right, we're going out contesting. And we did Lancing Bagnall, 2nd section, the area 2nd section, and Ponting 2nd section, and they wouldn't even put us in at Southport. They said, well, we're full up. We were a heck of a band. We played down in Lancing Bagnall, and we played Labour and Love. Well, I had some great corner men by this time. And do you remember Dick Aaron was an adjudicator? And, well, bless him. We played, there was 10 bands in this, down in Lancing Bagnall, which is Basingstoke. And he said, when you played, he said, you were 20 points in front of anybody else. And I said, well, you only put 1. He said, right, well, I didn't want to destroy it. And we won a cup, no bigger than that, and £250. And that's the best cup I've ever won.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Really?
I
said,
imagine.
look, we're on our way.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, we were in the area, and it was Lane, Introduction Elegy and Caprice. Yeah. And Derek Ruffle was playing soprano corner, and we weren't because we were in the Guildhall, and all these 2nd section bands were coming in. And there's a soprano bit at the end of the 2nd movement. And 4 soprano players came and sat on the front row and looked at Ruffle like that. And I couldn't tell you, because I was too busy doing the thing. We got it right. And it's the 2nd movement, and he plays a nice high note for a long time, and I just went, and he was perfect. And they're all watching. And he put his, and he went, yeah, he gave them rude gestures. And we won that by 3 points. So 2 after 2, we went down to Breen Sands, I think that's, yeah, that way. And the west coast down, was it Breen Sands? That might, anyway, one of the Pontins, and it was Rhapsody in Brass. And Ken Dennison came to me after, he said, you shouldn't have been playing in that section. He said, you just walked it. Of course, that took us down to London, because I said to Alexander, we've won our area, does that mean we go, oh no, you've got to win London? And I said, well, some bands only live anyway. And we went and we played Concertino, right again, the same fella. And the band we were in was Point of Air, they were quite a good band.
They were good in those days.
Yeah. And we played it and we won. And Tommy Dock was with me, he said, you jumped up and your feet came down on a woman's, your shoes came down on a woman's feet and she was heavily pregnant. Her husband wanted to kill you. So I went up to the stage and it was Teddy Gray and Dennison. And Teddy said, look, I've got to get away, but he'll tell you all about it. And I went backstage and he said, I'll show you that. And he showed me, he said, 15 points in front we were. But he brought that down.
Of course,
said, so we really won it, and that was it.
Well, what are you supposed to do? If you're building a band up and you want to go, you're going to win, and you're going to be in sections that
That's right.
you're too good for.
Yeah.
So Leyland gets up to the championship section. You do a incredible, groundbreaking tour of Japan,
Yes.
which really set the standard for future tours,
Yeah.
and the band is really well set. I was lucky enough to come to Leyland at 16 in 1984, I think it was. And the bit that struck me is how inspirational you were as a
Oh, bless
conductor.
you.
And
Thank
never
you.
before, and I've been lucky enough to play with some very good conductors through my playing career. Never before and never since has anybody in the middle inspired me as much as what you did.
Thank you.
And that team spirit and that camaraderie that was at Leyland at the time was very much down to your direction on that. And I just wonder, going back to your time in national service in the army, that style of conducting and man management, and I have to admit you were superb at it, and the inspiration that you got out of players, did all that come naturally? Or is that the honed product from years of different experiences?
I think, in one word, is honesty. Honesty.
Yes.
Because what I was doing, I loved doing it. And I worry about some bands now who don't have the same man in front of the band all the time, because that's how I did it.
Mm.
I've missed weddings, I've missed all sorts of things. I bet you have. And real events that, oh, why is my dad not coming? And because I said I need to be there. And I was the man who opened the band room, and I was the one who shut the band room, and I used to sweep the band room and things like that, because it was my band.
Yeah.
And I've had to sack people for it, which I didn't want to do, but if I didn't, because one of the best guys I had was my solo home player, Rob Davison, and he was wonderful, but he was trying to get a business going, a little shop going, and he was so tired, and that's what was catching him up. And I remember when we played with Blitz at All England Masters, there was a little, the judges were in the box for 20 minutes before they decided who was first and who was second, and it was one of those sort of phones. And the little 4 quavers, that Rob had to play in that quiet bit, didn't it? He just clipped one note. Because I asked David Reed many years after, what went wrong with it?
And that was the difference. Yeah.
And so, but he was like a second son to me. He used to come to my house and we used to look after him. And even my secretary Eunice was fond of him. Everybody, we loved him to bits. And I jumped in my car the day after and going towards this shop and this beaten up old Volvo estate, which he went to cash and carry for. Pulled up and he saw me and he went, wow, you know, because it was sunny. He threw his arms around me, then he looked at me and said, oh, no. He never really got over it. He died, I kept warning him, he was smoking. He died at 49. And, but I got him, he didn't speak to me for a while, but we got round because he knew how much I loved him. And Point of Air, he was having trouble with his marriage as well. Everything was against it. And he rang me up, the guy from David from Pointer. He said, I need a new horn player. I said, I've got one, good at. And I said, but he needs a reasonable job. And I said, but he's management material. And he put him in charge of one of his quarries.
Wonderful.
And it was a happy ending
Yeah.
until we had to
Yes.
bury him, which was not but that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but coming back to that, yeah, it's the only way I know. Commit yourself 100% with Wingates and with Fairies. I did some things at Fairies which I know hurt people, but yeah, and I loved it. I love music. I was very lucky.
You have to take those difficult decisions. Yeah, for the good
Yeah.
and the progressment of the band. I think my vivid memory of that time was 1984, the Albert Hall, Dances and Arias, and what a performance the band gave. It was stunning. And at the end, and I don't know if you remember this, but at the end, you gripped the conductor's lectern.
I did, yeah.
And your head was down,
Yeah,
and you were shaking for a good 10 seconds
yeah.
afterwards.
I never heard the band play like that before.
And it's the closest I've ever seen to you breaking down
Yeah.
after a
I do break
performance.
down a lot, actually.
But that was the most visible
Yeah.
one I've ever seen. What did that mean to you?
The first thing that happened, the band pushed me out of the way, musically. When I, pa 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 pa, and I thought, oh, they don't want me. They virtually pushed me out of the way. Honestly, never forgot that. It was a feeling I've never had before. They just took over. Whether and they did what I wanted them to do. I thought that was the beginning of Corey's trip.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
They were very good.
Oh, yes.
The performance from Leyland that year is one that just stays in my memory and always will do. It was
Wonderful.
incredible stuff.
Wonderful.
Absolutely incredible. Where does that rank in terms of your favourite performances?
My favourite performance of all time was Cambridge Variations at Cambridge itself.
Yes,
Because the night before we couldn't play it. And we just luckily got sponsorship from BNFL.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, oh, wonderful, wonderful. Because we couldn't get a hotel, because all the hotels, we didn't know whether we were going or not. If we'd have run out and went, no, we wouldn't have gone.
Mm.
And so, but they laid on a lovely hotel, and we had a lovely meal and so that. But I worked till at 10:30, 11:30 that night. Couldn't get it right. The clock part near the end with Martin McGlensky, couldn't play it. I thought, oh, I'm going to bed. And on that, about number 11 we played, and I just went, pump, and I thought, I've never heard that like that before. And it was one of those, the sixes and fives that went together.
Mm.
And I thought the fourth man down hadn't got it. He looked up at me and went, like that. And I, oh, you know then. And we just got Gary Lord on through, that was his first job he did.
Yeah.
And he set off was a super performance.
Mm.
And that was that.
Mm.
Yeah. So
And that's the one you're most proud of?
that's the one I'm most proud of.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
it doesn't always go by what you've won.
No, it doesn't.
More often than not, when I talk to people, it's the performances that they haven't perhaps won on, but meant the most
That's right.
to them. And one of those I remember with Leyland was when Contest Music
That was
Was that-
88,
88 at the
88.
Free Trade Hall,
number one.
and you drew number one.
We did.
Okay. And I heard most bands that day, and I had Leyland 15 points ahead.
Really?
It was
Yeah.
stunning. The pictures and the textures that came out of there. And then when Andy Lord, little Andy Lord on second corner, did that top C sharp, and the balconies were looking over
They
to
were.
see who were playing that. It was just pure
Oh,
magic.
yeah.
Talk us through that.
Well, again, I possibly had the worst. I just lost Ian Porthouse. He
That's
got
right.
to Desford.
Yes.
And so I had the worst front row I've ever had. And the band itself was feeling a bit low. And I said, come on, we must make an effort for this. And I paid £50 for a rehearsal room at Salford University. And we were just, well, I said, we'll run through the national anthem. And we're getting towards the national anthem, the guy ran and you drone number one, he said. I said, we better go now then. So we went. And again, I remember Roy Newsom once taking Bessie's to London, and he talked them out of, we're not playing number one, we're playing, I don't know how he did it, and I never tried anything like that. But I do remember, I thought, I'm going to make a great national anthem here. And a man came up to me after we'd played, he said, I'd have given you first prize for that national anthem. He said I wanted to stand up and clap, you know. And so we got off to a good start, and from then on it just went so well. But being number one, I mean, it's only ever been one off number one once, and that was Mullenfeld.
1954?
Yes,
yeah.
I was there.
I wasn't.
But then, on that day, in '88, Granthorpe had come in with Helga Howard, wanted me to go. And it was said, will you come across, when we played number one, he said, come across the road to
the Cafe Royal.
Cafe Royal, yeah, it's not there anymore, is it? No. And so I said, well, I went over, and I looked across at the room, and all the Leyland band was sitting there. And I thought, I felt like a Judas, I really did. But it didn't work, it didn't happen. Again, my dear friend H.M., he said, whatever you do, you're going to Granthorpe. I said, how did you know that? I know everything, he said. And he said, but don't sign anything yet. And that's when I got Philip McCann to come and play principal corner, yeah.
Do you think Harry Mortimer was the angel on your shoulder through your career?
I think he was on the angel for so many people's shoulders. In fact, he had a small group, well, we thought it was a small group, of his very special friends, because you're allowed to call him H.M. Because it was up to that was Mr. Mortimer, and he one time he said, just call me H.M. And everybody called him. So, and I thought I was one of maybe 10 people. It was a bit bigger than 10. But he rang every one of us up nearly every day.
Yes.
I wouldn't have liked his phone bill.
I think he could have afforded it.
Yeah, he taught me so many things, and
yes,
was so good, yeah. And his the service for his life in Salford Cathedral, I think, or Manchester Cathedral. Oh, what a band he had. Morris was playing trumpet voluntary.
Yeah, I remember. It was very good.
And Bram Day gave a fabulous eulogy.
Like everything in life, Richard, good things come to an end. How did your conductive relationship with Leyland finish?
I thought, I was amazed I was there for so long, because not
How long was it in the end?
About 20, maybe 22 years.
Yes, long time.
And it got to the 2000, and there was a piece of music by Bourgeois, and it was an adaptation of a piano duet, wasn't it? And Mr. Holt drives his car down. It was a concerto or something, and it wasn't very good. Well, I didn't like it. I found it difficult to energise the players. And at the end of it, again, we were never very, very lucky to London. I don't know why, but in the end I said, well, gentlemen, next rehearsal, I said, gentlemen, I've given it a lot of thought. I'm not going to take you to any more contests. I said, I'm going to still conduct the band, but I'll ask friends of mine and good men to conduct. And they went, oh. And I remember Paul Warder, because I said, what I've already picked for the area who wants to conduct you. And it's my friend Howard Snell. And Warder said, oh, good, we'll start winning now. And I looked at him and I thought, yeah, I don't think he meant it the way it came out.
How did that feel, though?
When he said that?
No.
Oh.
When you realised, no, when you realised that the time was right, relief. Was that?
It was relief.
Yeah.
At one time, several times, I felt I was pushing an elephant up a hill, you know, because not easy. But so yeah, relief, and I could do all the little bits and things. I didn't commit to anybody else. I did a lot with Yorkshire Hymns, and I did a lot with Yorkshire Building Society, and a bit with fairies and Foldens.
Yes.
So I could get about a bit. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I wasn't Monday, Thursday, you see, I could back off. And in fact, the sad thing is, of course, not only that, the finances went, although bless them then. And I'm now the president and the music director emeritus.
Emeritus, of course. Yeah.
That's when you're old and grown. But the big thing for us was picking that £100,000 a year from BNFL. And we went like that.
And of course that led to your second Open Championship in 1994.
Yes.
Heck of a band.
Yeah.
At that stage.
Yeah, it was. I talked to Jim Scott about it, and he said it was so good. Everything was so good. And then Steve Singleton on Youth, and I looked at him. He was like that, but he played absolutely beautifully. He didn't show. He has MS now, but
Oh, do you know?
he's coping with it all. So.
Well, we've got one final section to talk about, and this final section of life stories. Join us again in 2 minutes when we're going to explore a little bit of Richard Evans' private life in what will be the final section of this episode. Welcome back to the final part of this episode of Life Stories, and what an episode it's been. Richard, you told us a lot about your career today, and it's going to make for a heck of a show. You're known to be flamboyant, to be outgoing, from the cravats to your temperament. There's more to that though, isn't there? For every high point in life, there's always some low points as well. What tragedy and low points have you had to experience?
I think I've always felt the fact that with my father being in India and not seeing him for 7 years, that we never became father-son as you would normally, because I think when he came home, he was a stranger to me. I didn't know him. So I was, like I said before, I was very much a mummy's boy, because she did everything for us. And we went through the war and all the bombing in Plymouth, and so he was in India, still fighting, of course. But so that hurt a lot, and we never ever made it up. So that's on the family side. And I think, obviously, my ex-wife now, Sylvia, she was a player. That's where I met her way back. Her father was my best pal, and it was great. And we had a lovely life. We went all over the world. We'd got fancy holidays, and she played, and until my career started taking off, and I was conducting bands that she wasn't really able to play in those bands. And with two lovely kids. And in a way, with being busy, like you know what it's like being a busy bandsman, and particularly a director, you don't see your kids as much as you should. My son is now coming up to 60, and my daughter is just about 52. And I feel at times I should have spent more time with them. So that's one sad part. I wish I'd have spent more time with him. I mean, we get, well, my daughter and I get on well, not the same with my son and I, unfortunately. We don't get on that well, we never see each other, so, and he only lives down the road. But and I lost my mum, who was my best pal, in 2008, and she was 96, so
Wow.
I can't complain about that.
No, not at all.
But, and then, the busier I got, I was finding that my ex-wife, well, my wife Sylvia, didn't like it. She became, I'm not saying miserable, but she didn't like it. I'd do a gig maybe down in Worcester or somewhere, Birmingham, and when I finished, maybe in an orchestra, and when I finished, she'd ring, well, I'd ring her with mobile phones then. She said, how long will you be before you're home? And I said, well, I'm just going to have a drink, so, and we grew away from each other. And then, unfortunately, just when we were going to break up, she had she had a clot on her brain. She collapsed with a clot on her brain. And after bless her, she was very strong. After 3 weeks, she built herself up and she beat it. So we stayed together, but it wasn't working. And now, unfortunately, she has this a kind of dementia. So she's in a home now. She wouldn't know me if I went. My daughter goes and my son goes. But in a way, she's happy there because she's got company, but it's not.
And being cared for.
Yeah,
Yes.
and being cared
Yeah.
for.
How did Morris's death affect you, and how does it still affect you? Because it clearly does.
Mm. I couldn't believe it. All of a sudden, because I became a liveryman in the worshipful company. I always wanted to go there and be in it, and I became a freeman. And he came to my freeman induction at the Guild Hall, and I said, "You don't look so well, what, you know?" And he said, "No, I'm not well." And he was on about what he'd done, and it was talk that he'd been drinking quite a bit, and his playing. Nobody ever complained about his playing. I mean, I still think he was the best trumpet player ever.
Mm.
You know, and he was so helpful to me. He used to sit, we never practiced together because he wanted to go to the pictures when I lived with him in his mum's house. But every now and then I'd get a call. I said, I want you to play in the BBC Northern. And then we went down to London, it was to the LSO, and he made a name for himself then. And he was such a character then, and a fabulous player. And shows how a bit naive he was. The first day he went down to a studio in London, in his first day with the LSO, who came along to conduct? John Williams, and they became immediate great friends.
Mm.
And John Williams said, because the first thing he ever played was a high C, and it was Star Wars theme, and he said, this is John Williams, when I heard the diamond bright sound of Maurice Murphy's trumpet, I realised I wanted him in every one of my films. And he virtually did that until just recently, because he died in 2010.
Mm.
And I went to see him, he just said, oh, he's not very well, he's in University College
Hospital, yes.
And I went to see him, he was up on the 15th floor, and his legs were banged. I said, what's it? He said, oh, I've had dialysis as well. I said, well, why didn't you let me know? And he said, drinking. I said, oh, come on. He said, yeah, I drank your share as well. And he'd just been told that he'd got the MBE, and he couldn't tell me because he had to wait. He said, I was dying to tell you. And he started to go downhill, and he had trouble with his bile duct somewhere. And I said to him, look, why don't you go private? And he said, no, Barnet Hospital is doing us great. And Shirley said, yeah, we're like that. There's no problem, no problem. And he was ill on a Friday, and he went to Barnet Hospital, and all the top men, the consultants, they had the weekend off. And he said to a nurse, whatever you do to this nurse, he said, don't let anybody put a pipe down him, a peg. And of course, on the Saturday morning, this doctor said, put a peg down on that. And she said, no, I can't. Are you disagreeing with me? Anyway, and he went. What a man.
I saw you.
What a funeral.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
I saw you backstage at Brassing concert last year,
Yeah.
if you remember. And one of the great CDs you did with Leyland was The Lighter Side of Maurice Murphy. And John Doyle had played People. And you were relaying the story to me backstage. And I hope you don't mind me saying that you had a tear in your eye,
Yeah.
and you was a little emotional. So it's still raw. The losing of any best friend is still raw.
He was my best man, of course.
Of course he was.
Right, yeah.
But to have such a best friend is a blessing.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we have to view life. The two things are certain. We're born and we die.
Yeah.
But to have had the company of such a great man as a best friend,
Yes.
you must feel very blessed.
Oh, yeah, I'm blessed. Yeah. But I'm not giving up yet.
You're still going strong.
Yeah,
You've still got lots of things still to do.
I'm up to Scotland in a couple of days' time to get ready for Blackpool, the Spring Festival.
With Dalmellington.
Dalmellington.
Yes.
And we won the junior trophy
That's right.
last year, played number 1 after 20. And then we're off to Japan in June.
Fabulous.
Again.
I'm glad you brought up Japan,
Yeah.
because you have a fabulous relationship with Japan. Just tell us all how that came about.
Well, it was your old band.
It was. It was.
In
Yes.
1977, this call, Alan Lawton said, we've got 14 members of Tokyo Brass Society band coming. They can't speak a word of English, but they've got an interpreter. And they came along, and they were lovely people. And that's when I first met Takeo Yamamoto, the professor.
Yes.
And they watched us, they listened to us rehearse, and then this lady came up and said, they were like, any chance can they record things and film it? It was an amazing transformation. They had tripods up their legs, and they were bringing out, and they've got everything, little recording things, film things, and because every time I go to Japan, which probably I go twice a year to take Tokyo City Concert Brass, and they all sit down, they peg on they peg all these recording things and tuning things on their stands, and so they were there, and then Yamamoto handed me a score of Warabak Uta, which is a selection of Japanese children's songs, and he'd done the arrangement for brass band. So I said to the library, will you pass it down? And then I put the score on the conductor stand, and I handed my baton to him. Well, we've been like that ever since.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Brass banding now is truly, truly international.
Yes.
And it's no longer the domain of the British on their own. We have fabulous bands all the way around the world. If you had to sum up the difference between the approach of brass making and teaching in Japan to what it is in England, what would you say the big difference was?
At this stage, I perhaps have to leave the top 5 or 6 bands out. But when I did in Senjuku College, there was something in the region of 150 young brass players of different standards. And I was there for a full week. Every time I went, I had to switch the lights off, otherwise they'd have practiced forever. And that's what they do. I'm not saying the British style band, our British bands don't practice, but the local bands don't practice as much as that. The big bands, I know people like Corey's and Fairies and that, they rehearse a lot more, but they work a lot harder. You mentioned the band that we were all talking about, Akander. And also we've got Corey's as well.
We have.
I remember a lovely story about Simon Cowan, the trombone player in Liverpool, Phil.
Yes, know him well.
And he's a lovely guy. And Corey's needed him. I think the trombone player was going somewhere. They needed him to play at the Open about 2-3 years ago. And he said, I caught an earlier train and I shouldn't have done, down to Cardiff. Oh, he was in London, he went to Cardiff. And he said, they rehearsed at 8 o'clock. And I got to the band room at 6, and I thought, but the door was open. And he said, so I went in, and there were 2 people sitting down and playing. And the librarian was giving music out. That was at 6 o'clock. 6:30, there were 10 people there. At 7 o'clock, it was nearly a full band. 7:20, it was a full band. So Harper came in, Philip Harper. He said, we might as well start. And he said, I've never known anything like it. And that, again, success becomes before hope.
Yeah, of course it does. Of course it does. Now, we mentioned that we were going to come on to this several times during today, but how many cravats do you actually own? And what was the history about how you first started with this extravagant neckwear?
My ex-wife Sylvia, she said, I've just run you, because she's a seamstress, I've just run you this lovely, and it doesn't crease, and I just put it on. And then the lovely Alan Lawton hated it.
I can imagine.
Yeah, bless him, we're dear pals. And then he said, I don't like you wearing that cravat. I said, well, I'm known for wearing cravats. I met the Queen when And
Yes.
that was only in 1977 when we played, Fairies played at the Palace Theatre for her Silver Jubilee concert. And he said, there, he showed me an invitation. He said, look, black ties. I said, right. So he said, you can't wear that. You can't wear your cravat. And I said, oh, Bernard Wrigley's on that. If Bernard Wrigley...
Bulldog of Bolton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if Bernard Ridley is wearing a tie, I'll put a black tie on. Of course he wasn't.
Yeah.
So. And there's a picture, I nearly brought it today, of me shaking hands with the Queen, because I met her that day.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So how many did you-
not
how
very
many did
many,
you have?
honestly, not very many. I was just saying this. But when I started going back and conducting Grindthorpe, I hadn't worn a cravat for a long time. So I put one on. And I think that gave me some points.
Yeah.
I used to love brassing concert.
Well, you're the king of brassing concert.
Well,
I was going to come on to
I'm
this.
Not now, because I'm like, I don't know what to play.
Well, I think you had a formula
I did.
when you would have a fabulous opener, a slow march that you would swagger all over the stage with, a great solo, a little bit of slapstick fun, and then a nice finale.
Yeah.
The crowd were entertained, and it seemed to work. A little different now. Do you think it's moved? That formula has moved on and doesn't work there anymore?
Well, I think it would work. It would, but there are people there's a group of people who run it, like a committee or a group. They might put some conditions in that make it that you can't. They've already taken the march away, and I hate to sound like I'm bragging, but I won it 15 times. So, but those 15 times gave the band that I was conducting £500. So I said to Kenny, why have you stopped? Oh, he said, well, nobody wants to play one now because you win it all the time. and I thought, well, that's not a reason not to. Anyway, but all my conductor friends, nobody knows what to pick. You know, and if you pick something ultra modern, I always was told when I started, Harold Moss told me, Dick, play a march, overture, and a waltz, and then a corner solo. Something, all right, I know that's pretty simple, but it pleased people. And I know that audience up in the northeast there.
Yes.
They like that. I stopped playing marches because I had to do, and they said, you didn't play a march. Gough Richards used to come up in his chair, his wheelchair. Sue used to wheel him up. She said, we're going home soon. He just wants to listen to your march.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, one of my abiding memories of you at a brassing concert is dressed as Sergeant Pepper
Oh, yeah.
and playing the slowest ever on the quarterdeck. I think you probably played it at 60.
Something like that, yeah.
With the biggest swagger
Yeah.
ever, and the crowd loved it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's Richard Evans all over.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm glad to
to
be-
entertain us, to entertain yourself,
Yeah.
and to leave us with such a fabulous legacy and a fabulous memory.
Thanks, Martin.
It's been a pleasure to know you.
Thank you.
What's next?
What's next? Well, one thing that's not next is retirement.
I don't think it ever
No,
would be.
I couldn't retire. I'd be in trouble if I retire. But I am taking it easier. Well, I've been told I'm taking it easier. And so, yeah, some nice trips to Verona, to the opera, and places like that. But and I wouldn't mind sometimes, because drop down to maybe a third or fourth section band and take them 2 or 3 times a month, something like that, to help the conductor. That'd be fun. See if I could do it again. No.
That you could always do it. You could always do it.
Time's catching me up though, yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
time would ever catch you up. Unfortunately, our time has run out.
Right.
So, from the bottom of my heart, Richard Evans, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful afternoon with you, and thank you for contributing to this series.
Thank you. That's been an honour. I do appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Well, what a show that was, and my huge thanks to Richard Evans, fantastic guest. plenty more to come with more guests in the Life Story series, and please keep up to date on Brass Pass TV for all the latest news, and the next episode of Life Stories will be announced very soon. Thanks for listening.